What if there was just one sentence so powerful, so psychologically piercing, that it could strike fear into the heart of a narcissist forever? This isn't some dramatic exaggeration. It's a truth rooted in the deep, complex work of the renowned psychologist Carl Jung. What I'm about to share with you could change the way you interact with toxic people for the rest of your life. Have you ever felt like someone was warping your reality, turning your confidence into confusion, your peace into chaos? As if your thoughts were no longer your own and your emotions were being slowly stolen from you? That eerie, draining feeling isn't just in your imagination. Carl Jung had a name for it. He described this experience as the shadow projection of a deeply wounded psyche. And in today's video, we're going to explore one powerful sentence, one profound truth, that Jung believed could make any narcissist recoil in fear. But be warned, once you hear and understand this psychological insight, there's no way to go back to the way things were. You'll see manipulation for what it truly is, and you'll never be able to unsee it. So ask yourself, are you ready to free yourself from the invisible strings that a narcissist tries to pull? Do you really want to reclaim your mental space, your emotional clarity, and your sense of self? If so, keep listening closely. Carl Jung's work offers a stunning realization. Narcissistic behavior is never actually about you. No matter how much they blame, criticize, or belittle you, it's not really you they're reacting to. According to Jung, what you're seeing is the outward performance of their internal war. A war with the shadow self they've never dared to face. Jung explained that narcissists operate under what he called an inflated ego consciousness, a fragile psychological structure that exists solely to mask a profound, often unbearable inner emptiness. Behind their arrogance and control lies a shame they can't admit even to themselves. This is why they are drawn, like moths, to empathetic, emotionally aware people, those capable of reflection and compassion. You, in their eyes, represent everything they've long buried and denied within. In fact, Jung noted that narcissists unconsciously gravitate toward people who possess their own repressed traits, true empathy, honest self-awareness, and deep emotional integrity. It's not just attraction, it's psychological magnetism. Why? Because being near you, witnessing your emotional depth and inner strength, forces them to feel what they've lost, and that is terrifying. But instead of facing that truth, they launch a psychological defense, projection. They toss their inner chaos outward onto you. You become the villain in their story, the source of their discomfort. But here's where Jung's insight becomes a weapon of clarity. The moment you realize this projection is happening, you begin to reclaim your power. Keep listening, because the next part may shock you. Jung revealed that narcissists are consumed by what he termed persona obsession, an overpowering compulsion to uphold a false identity, a mask they must never let slip. He uncovered 3 core drives that fuel this toxic behavior. Control, to avoid confronting their own shadow. Validation, to artificially sustain their inflated ego. Confusion, to blur your perception and prevent you from seeing who they truly are. According to Jung, control is their most vital survival tool. They must control the way you see the world, your emotions, your memories, even your sense of right and wrong. Why? Because your genuine, unmasked self is a direct threat to the illusion they live behind. When Jung studied personality disorders, he found something disturbing. Narcissists live in a constant, underlying panic, the fear of being truly seen. This is why they twist your words, alter your experiences, and manipulate your emotional reality. It isn't power, it's panic. Jung explained that what may appear as confidence is actually a cover for something far more fragile. Their craving for praise isn't about joy or pride. It's what Jung called ego inflation, a desperate attempt to counterbalance a sense of psychological deflation hidden deep in their unconscious mind. They don't seek admiration to grow. They seek it to survive. Every compliment you give them, every ounce of praise, is like a fleeting breath of air to someone drowning. It doesn't heal, it only delays the inevitable collapse. But Jung's most disturbing discovery, the one that truly reveals their deepest fear, is their use of confusion as a weapon. Jung observed that narcissists deliberately create what he termed psychological fog. This isn't accidental, it's a calculated tactic designed to distort your perception, confuse your judgment, and ultimately control your emotional reactions. They blur the lines between truth and illusion, between reality and manipulation, all with one goal: to weaken your clarity. Why? Because a confused victim is a controllable one, and in their distorted world, your clarity is their greatest threat. Think about it. Have you ever left a conversation with a narcissist feeling emotionally drained, mentally scattered, and unsure of what just happened? That's no coincidence. Jung believed that narcissists thrive in this chaos because it gives them a psychological edge. When you're trapped in a fog, you second-guess yourself. And when you second-guess yourself, they win. But stay with me, because what Carl Jung revealed next is not only profound, it's liberating. His solution to breaking free from this mental prison will astound you. Jung said that the key to defeating narcissistic manipulation lies in what he called the conscious withdrawal of projection. In more simple terms, it means this: you stop feeding their emotional appetite. Narcissists are what Jung described as emotional vampires. They feed off what he termed unconscious participation. They don't just want your attention. They want your reactions, your frustration, your tears, your explanations. Every moment you spend trying to make them understand is exactly what they need to maintain control. According to Jung, the moment you start arguing with a narcissist, you're no longer having a rational discussion. What you're doing is feeding their shadow. Every defensive explanation you offer, every attempt to gain their empathy, tells them their manipulation is working. You become entangled in what Jung referred to as unconscious participation mystique, a psychological trap where you unknowingly help fuel their distorted reality. And here's the dangerous part. When you're caught in that loop, it feels endless. You try harder, explain more, plead for understanding, only to find yourself even more misunderstood. That's the fog doing its job. But Jung revealed something revolutionary, something that flips the script entirely. The moment you achieve what he called conscious detachment, their control begins to unravel. And this isn't emotional coldness, it's clarity. It's what Jung described as individuated consciousness, the ability to observe their manipulation without being emotionally hijacked by it. You stop reacting. You stop justifying, you start seeing clearly. Jung emphasized that firm, conscious detachment means you no longer participate in their psychological drama. You observe it, you recognize it, but you don't absorb it. You witness their projection, their tactics, their emotional baiting, and you refuse to internalize any of it. This drives narcissists into a state of quiet panic. Why? Because, as Jung noted, their inflated ego depends on your unconscious participation. Without your emotional energy to feed on, they feel exposed, weakened, and threatened. And here's where Jung delivers his most powerful insight of all. Narcissists cannot survive psychological independence. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop chasing their approval, and stop trying to prove your worth, something inside them starts to crumble. You become, in Jung's words, psychologically unavailable, and that makes you immune to their manipulation. But wait, there's more. Jung discovered that there is one sentence, just one phrase, that can instantly accelerate this transformation. A phrase that calmly, clearly, and powerfully establishes a boundary narcissists cannot cross. Are you ready to hear it? According to Carl Jung, there is one statement that completely disrupts what he called the narcissistic participation mystique. This phrase doesn't attack, it doesn't provoke, it doesn't invite retaliation or emotional warfare. Instead, it creates what Jung described as a psychological barrier, an impenetrable shield that narcissists cannot manipulate or breach. The sentence is simple. I'm not available for this conversation. It may sound mild, even unassuming, but Jung said it is psychologically devastating to a narcissist. Why? Because it denies them the very fuel they rely on, your unconscious emotional involvement. Carl Jung observed that narcissists depend on pulling you into what he described as circular psychological entanglement. Those endless, exhausting conversations that never lead to resolution, but always lead to your exhaustion. They're designed to drain your clarity, your peace, and your sense of reality. But when you calmly say, "I'm not available for this conversation," you're doing something radical. You're not just setting a boundary. You're withdrawing your psychic energy from their entire game. Jung called this conscious non-participation, and he believed it was the narcissist's greatest fear. Why does this terrify them? Because Jung understood something fundamental about the narcissistic mind. They require your emotional engagement like oxygen. Without your reactions, without your participation, they're no longer able to maintain the illusion of superiority and control. What you're doing, in effect, is removing the emotional mirror they need to prop up their identity. And without that mirror, they are left staring directly into what Jung called their shadow emptiness, a deep, haunting void they've spent their entire lives avoiding. This is the terrifying part for them, not because you've hurt them, but because you've stopped giving them what they crave. Jung observed that this simple yet powerful sentence works for one critical reason: it cannot be twisted. It is immune to their usual arsenal of manipulation tactics. It's not an insult, so they can't pretend you've attacked them. It's not an explanation, so they can't spin it around or gaslight you. It's simply a firm, non-negotiable boundary. And according to Jung, boundaries like this are kryptonite to narcissistic behavior. Why? Because boundaries force them to operate outside their comfort zone of control. They can no longer pull you into their web of emotional confusion. But Jung also left a critical warning for those brave enough to use this boundary. Be prepared, because when you stand your ground, they will escalate. Stay with me, because understanding this next part is vital to breaking free. Carl Jung actually predicted the exact behavior shift that occurs when you begin to use this sentence consistently. He called it shadow projection intensification. In simpler terms, when narcissists feel their grip on you slipping, they don't back off. They push harder. Temporarily, their manipulation tactics will increase in intensity. They may accuse you of being heartless. They might call you distant, evasive, emotionally unavailable. But here's the paradox. These accusations aren't signs of failure. They are proof that your boundary is working. Jung emphasized that this response is not random. It's the result of you disrupting their psychological homeostasis, the internal balance of power they need to protect their false self. When you no longer participate in their emotional theatrics, they begin to experience what Jung termed ego deflation, anxiety, a psychological panic triggered by the confrontation of their true, wounded self. This moment can feel unsettling. You may even question whether you're doing the right thing. But Jung discovered something remarkable through his work. If you remain consistent, the psychological shift will take root. By calmly and repeatedly saying, "I'm not available for this conversation," you begin the process Jung called psychological individuation, the return to your authentic self. You stop reacting, you stop justifying, and with each repetition, you reinforce your independence and deny their control. Eventually, as Jung noted, narcissists begin to understand something they dread. They cannot penetrate this boundary. They might switch tactics, use guilt, flattery, silence, but none of it works because, as Jung put it, your consistent refusal to engage breaks what he described as the projection hook, the mechanism by which they psychologically entangle you into their distorted version of reality. Carl Jung believed this sentence is not just communication, it's a powerful act of psychological sovereignty. By saying it, you are declaring that your psychic energy is no longer available for their manipulation, their chaos, or their emotional vampirism. You're not just setting a limit, you're reclaiming your mind, your emotional clarity, your power. According to Jung, this act is what narcissists fear most, not because you've punished them, but because you've withdrawn what sustains them. And in doing so, you force them to face their greatest internal terror. Psychological abandonment. Not the loss of you specifically, but the loss of their ability to avoid facing their shadow through manipulating others. That's what truly terrifies the narcissist. Not your departure, not your silence, but what your boundary represents. You're not just walking away from a toxic connection. You're dismantling the illusion they've built to protect themselves from their own emptiness. And now we arrive at Jung's final insight, one that has the power to completely transform how you deal with toxic people. This isn't a trick or a strategy, it's a psychological awakening. Carl Jung believed that when you consistently maintain this kind of clear boundary, you reach what he considered the highest form of psychological development, individuation in the face of manipulation. You become whole, not just emotionally, but psychologically. You no longer fracture under the weight of someone else's unconscious projections. According to Jung, this transformation has a ripple effect. It doesn't just protect you from a single narcissist. It grants you a kind of psychological immunity to manipulation in general. You develop what he called conscious recognition, a sharp internal awareness that allows you to spot projection, control tactics, and emotional traps before they take hold. No longer are you walking blindly into confusion. No longer are you vulnerable to emotional games. Jung observed that people who truly master this art of detachment become exactly what narcissists fear the most: psychologically unavailable targets. They can no longer hook into your energy. They can't drain your emotions, twist your reality, or coerce your reactions. You've taken back what Jung called your authentic psychological authority, a grounded sense of self that no longer bends to emotional threats or silent manipulations. But perhaps Jung's most profound observation is this. This sentence doesn't just change how narcissists see you. It changes how you see yourself. Each time you honor your own boundaries, each time you refuse to engage in circular conversations, each time you choose silence over explanation, you are strengthening what Jung called your conscious ego, the true, centered version of yourself that exists beyond manipulation. This is not arrogance, it's self-ownership. Jung believed that true psychological freedom isn't about fixing or changing others. It's about becoming unavailable to their unconscious games. When you master the art of conscious non-participation, you don't just free yourself from narcissistic cycles, you rise above them. This is how you reclaim your power, not with force, but with presence. Not by reacting, but by choosing not to. One sentence, one clear decision, one grounded moment, at a time. The narcissist's greatest weapon, emotional entanglement, becomes utterly useless against someone who refuses to enter the arena. You don't have to outsmart them, you don't have to fight them, and you certainly don't have to fix them. All you need to do is become psychologically unavailable for their manipulation. And that, not your anger, not your resistance, is what makes them fear you forever. Not your outburst, but your unshakable peace. Not your argument, but your conscious silence. Not your reaction, but your absolute refusal to participate in their distorted reality. The moment you truly understand this, you've already won. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it.